After Parmenides, the idea of change became a really big deal in philosophy. The philosophers who tried to solve this problem split into two groups, the pluralists and the atomists. Both the pluralists and the atomists explain change as things joining together or splitting apart. Earlier philosophers tried to explain existence with just one basic element, but these guys thought there were lots of basic elements. The pluralists and atomists believed the universe had many elements that never went away and never changed. These elements are always moving. As they move, they separate or combine. All the different things we see around us come from this joining and separating. Nothing ever disappears completely, it just breaks down into its elements. In this section, we'll talk about Empedocles and Anaxagoras, who were pluralists, and Leucippus and Democritus, who were atomists. We'll look at their ideas about existence and how they explained change. Empedocles' natural philosophy and the Four-Element Theory. Empedocles lived from 495 to 435 BC in Anaxagoras, a city on the southern coast of Sicily. He was a man of many talents. He was a political leader, a poet, a philosopher, a doctor and a scientist. He was also thought to be a prophet and a healer. So people saw him as a symbol of both reason and magic. Stories say he was offered the chance to be king, but he said no. It's said he started a medical school in Sicily which influenced Plato and Aristotle. Some stories even say he jumped into Mount Etna to end his life. Empedocles wrote two important books, and Empedocles' wide range of interests reflected the growth of Greek culture in Italy at the time, both in art and in science and math. Other philosophers believed water, air and fire were the basic elements of everything. Empedocles added earth as the fourth element. He connected these four elements to Greek gods. In his book he writes, "Hear the four roots, shining Zeus, life-giving Hera, Hades and Nestis, who moistens the world's springs with her tears." Empedocles called these four basic elements rhizomata, meaning roots. These roots can't be destroyed, they never change, and they've always existed and always will. Their qualities are fixed and they can't be divided. The number of roots stays the same, and they can combine in countless ways, but they don't change into each other. This idea of a basic element became elementum in Latin, and it was important in physics and chemistry until the 17th century. According to Empedocles, there's no real change in the universe. Everything we see happens when these four roots combine or separate in different amounts. So nothing is ever truly destroyed, it just separates. The root elements completely fill the universe, and there's no such thing as empty space. He said that nothing can come from nothing, and nothing that exists can ever be destroyed. The forces that make the roots combine and separate are love and strife. Love brings the roots together and strife pulls them apart. Love is a force that helps people have good thoughts and do good things, while strife brings pain and bad things. These two forces are always fighting for control in the universe. When love is in charge, there's unity and harmony. When strife takes over, things separate and become chaotic. Some people believe love and strife inspired the ideas of attraction and repulsion in physics. Empedocles' ideas were also scientific. Natural objects and living things happen when the four roots combine randomly. This combining doesn't have a purpose. This mechanical view makes him an important scientist of ancient times. Some even say his methods were more scientific than Plato's or Aristotle's. He said that when living things appear, the ones that don't fit in die, and only the ones that fit in survive. This is seen as an early version of the idea of natural selection. Empedocles also studied how we experience the world through our senses and developed the theory of interaction through pores in objects. According to this theory, rays coming out of the pores in objects interact with each other, making it possible for us to sense things. But Empedocles' system didn't fully explain how things could move in a universe with no empty space. Anaxagoras, Pluralism and Cosmic Order. Anaxagoras lived from 500 to 428 BC and was born in Clazomenae, a city near Izmir. He moved to Athens when Pericles invited him. There, during some political arguments, he was accused of being against religion. He was the first philosopher in history to be put on trial for his ideas. Politics was a place where philosophical arguments happened too. Pericles' political enemies attacked Anaxagoras by accusing him of not believing in the gods because his ideas went against Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, the sun was a god, but Anaxagoras thought the sun was just a rock. These traditional beliefs made the aristocrats more powerful, so going against them was seen as both not believing in the gods and a threat to the government. So Anaxagoras was forced to leave Athens. Anaxagoras believed that everything came from an infinite number of spermata or seeds. This was a step beyond Empedocles' four root elements. Empedocles only talked about four root elements, but Anaxagoras thought there were an unlimited number of them. He believed everything had its own seed, so copper comes from copper seeds, and an apple comes from apple seeds. But this didn't mean copper only contained copper seeds. Anaxagoras believed everything is a part of everything else, because in the beginning, everything was together. Over time, these opposites separated and formed the universe. This separation meant that everything carries a part of its opposite within it. According to Anaxagoras, change in living and non-living things happens when these seeds combine or separate. When something is destroyed, it just means the particles that made it up have spread apart. In the same way, when something new appears, it's because these particles have come back together. By watching how people eat, Anaxagoras believed that change happens when tiny, invisible particles combine. A child grows because of these tiny seeds they get from food. This means all change in the universe happens the same way. In the beginning, the universe was a chaotic mess. Over time, order came out of this chaos. Empedocles thought this order came from two forces, love and strife. But Anaxagoras believed it came from a force he called nous. Nous is the purest, finest thing. It's not mixed with anything else, and it's the force that organizes all change in the universe. Nous is the only thing that moves on its own and knows everything. Anaxagoras said that nous organizes everything, but it didn't create the universe. The elements of the universe are as old as nous, and nous started the first organization of the universe, then stepped back. Anaxagoras' idea of separating nous and matter makes him the first dualist in the history of philosophy. A dualist believes in two kinds of things that can't be reduced to each other. Nous is an abstract organizing force, not a material thing. With this teleological view, which means everything has a purpose, Anaxagoras believed the universe is organized according to a conscious plan. So humans should try to understand the purposes of nous. The atomists and quantitative pluralism. The atomists came after the pluralists and had a different idea about where everything came from. The word atom means something that can't be divided or broken apart. This idea says that everything comes from basic elements that can't be physically divided, even though they might be mathematically divisible. As we saw earlier, Empedocles and Anaxagoras, who argued against Parmenides, believed in qualitative pluralism. They thought root elements with similar qualities combined to make objects. The atomists had a different idea. They believed in quantitative pluralism. This means the qualities of an object depend on the number of atoms it's made of and how those atoms are arranged. For example, in something hard, the atoms are packed tightly together, but in something soft, the atoms are arranged more loosely. In the same way, atoms can form wood under certain conditions and iron under different conditions. The two most important atomists were Leucippus and his student Democritus. They lived from 460 to 370 BC. Leucippus, the founder of atomism. Leucippus, a philosopher from Miletus, was the one who started the philosophy of atomism. Sadly, we don't know much about him. Most of his writings are credited to his student Democritus, so some people even question whether he really existed. But Aristotle talked about Leucippus a lot in his writings, so we know he was real. Zeno of Elea, his teacher, had a big influence on Leucippus's philosophy. Zeno believed everything could be divided forever. Leucippus disagreed and said that things are made of tiny particles that can't be divided. He called these indivisible particles atoms. Things exist and are destroyed when atoms join together and break apart. For this to happen, you have to believe in empty space. Parmenides said that everything is one, and there's no empty space or movement. Leucippus disagreed and said there is movement in the universe and empty space is necessary for that. From the few writings we have left, we understand that Leucippus thought the universe was made of two basic things: empty space and full space, the atoms. He believed that atoms can't be divided or destroyed, and there are an infinite number of them. Another important part of Leucippus's atomism is that things happen in the universe for a reason, not randomly. He summed up this idea by saying, "Nothing happens in vain, but everything from a ground and of necessity." In short, Leucippus is considered the founder of atomism. He introduced the ideas of empty space, movement and determinism to philosophy by suggesting that the smallest building blocks of matter are indivisible atoms. Even though we don't know much about him, he was a very important philosopher. Democritus and atomic theory. Democritus was a very important ancient Greek philosopher. He's known for his atomic theory. He travelled a lot during his long life and met people from many different cultures. These experiences shaped his philosophical ideas. Democritus believed that everything in the universe is made of tiny particles that can't be broken down any further. He called these particles atoms. Atoms are tiny bits that move freely in empty space. They come in different shapes and sizes, and there are an infinite number of them. They can't be destroyed. Here are the main points of his atomic theory. Atoms are the smallest particles and can't be broken down any further. Atoms move around in empty space. This empty space lets atoms bump into each other and join up to make different things. There are an infinite number of atoms. Atoms are always moving. This movement is the main reason for all the changes and transformations in the universe. Atoms have different qualities like shape, size and weight. These differences explain why there are so many different kinds of materials. Democritus's view of the universe. Democritus believed the universe was entirely physical. He thought everything in the universe is made of atoms, and different arrangements of these atoms make different things. This idea was a very important foundation for modern atomic theory. Philosophers before Democritus believed that the universe was based on four elements: water, air, fire, and earth. Democritus disagreed with this and said that the atom was the basic building block of the universe. Democritus's atomic theory was a major turning point in the history of philosophy and science. This theory is seen as the beginning of our search to understand the smallest parts of matter. Democritus's ideas laid the groundwork for the development of modern atomic theory centuries later. To sum up, Democritus was an important philosopher who came up with the idea that the atom is the basic building block of the universe. The main points of his atomic theory are indivisibility, empty space, infinity, movement and difference. Democritus's ideas had a huge impact on philosophy and science and created an important foundation for modern science.